Comrade Tom, who will be talking about dialectical and historical materialism and understanding the class struggle. Tom.
All right, to begin, I think one thing that sticks out to me as dialectical materialism can be a really complicated thing to understand. I think, at least it was for me. I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. But one thing that really caught my attention was actually in the first episode of Breaking Bad, which sounds silly to say, like at this conference, but the main character is a chemistry teacher. In the first episode, in describing chemistry, he, whether consciously or not, is describing the dialectical method. I'll just read that for you. Technically chemistry is the study of matter. Well, I prefer to see it as a study of change. Just think about this. Electrolytes, they change their energy levels. Molecules change their bonds. Elements combine and change into compounds. That's all of life. It's the constant. It's the cycle. It's solution and dissolution, and over again. It is growth, decay, and transformation. It's fascinating, really. This method of thought is known as dialectical materialism, and all matter and phenomena follow this universal rule without exception, whether it be chemical matter, individuals, or entire social formations. The basic explanation of dialectical materialism, as David puts it, is things change, as he said just the other day. Yeah, right. All things are constantly changing. Cells multiply, people age until death, continents are shifting, galaxies continue to move, and the universe as we understand it expanded and is retracting. All phenomena contain within them contradictions, and it is these contradictions which give matter motion. Just as without up there can be no down, without day there can be no night, without death there can be no life. It is this unity of opposites and the struggle between the two that forces change within a given subject, and this concept is universal. The dialectical method isn't inherently a Marxist concept. Applying it to all matter and social relations is, however. While all matter does follow this universal law, human societies do as well, as we are not a creation somehow alien from nature. On the Chinese Revolution and the construction of social society, Chairman Mao Zedong said, "In a word, China is a socialist country. Before liberation, she was much the same as a capitalist country. Even now, she practices an 8-grade wage system, distribution according to work, and exchange through money. And in all of this differs very little from the old society. What is different is the system of ownership has been changed." In other words, the struggle between opposites is raging in society even after the Socialist Revolution and the establishment of a People's Republic. China is a socialist country and in some aspects differs very little from the old society. It is the struggle between old and dying capitalism on the one hand and the construction of socialism on the other, and it is this struggle between these two which give motion to the transition from the former to the latter. This historical law, known as historical materialism, does not only apply to the transformation of a capitalist society into a socialist one, but on the contrary, it is a basic formula for all shifts of power from one class to another, including the transition from feudalism to capitalism, from slave society to feudalism, and pre-class society to slave society. The transition from feudalism in Europe to capitalism followed a simple rubric. Feudalism is based off the ownership of land, determined by lineage, often by divine right, and the working of that land by serfs. There is a clear distinction between the ruling and laboring classes. However, it does not take the specific form as it does today under capitalist ownership. Within feudalism grew the embryo of commodity production, the linchpin of capitalist mode of production, which differs entirely from the feudal system of ownership and production. As this small class of artisans, shopkeepers, bankers, and the like grew stronger and stronger and began to shape the economy more and more in their image, the weaker the feudal system became and the less able it became to shape society. The less able it became to shape society and hold onto its own political power. The way I tend to look at it sort of like when I visualize it is I think of like, let's just call it a thing. You have a thing, and within that thing is another thing that's, which sounds really silly, but the thing that's inside the first thing is what gives the sort of like as I mentioned before, night turning into day. just the sun, well, the planet is moving in relation to the sun. It's still day, but it's a slow transformation from day into night. Soon enough, it's no longer day, it's no longer night. It sort of became the opposite that's contained within the day. Does that make any sense to everybody? Is everybody following me? Yeah. One example of this in history is the Great French Revolution at the tail end of the 18th century. It marked the end of absolutism and feudalism in Europe's most powerful and prestigious monarchies. Had you asked anyone in society at the time, whether a member of the clergy, the aristocracy, shopkeepers, or the serfs themselves, whether or not a revolutionary restructuring of society was on the horizon, let alone possible, they'd all tell you it was nonsense to imagine such a thing. After all, these were monolithic institutions which had literally been dominant for over 1,000 years. However, as I've already mentioned, things change. Today, people hold similar prejudices when it comes to overthrowing imperialism and building socialism in its place. But it is important to note that if we ask the young men and women of Ferguson, who 2 weeks ago, if they could see themselves directly confronting the full force of the repressive state apparatus, assault rifles and tear gas and all, they'd look at you like you're crazy. Again, things change, and they change for a reason. The objective conditions for radical transformation clearly exist, and it is up to us to create the subjective ones necessary to actually push the new system into the forefront. But I don't want to quote. I hate to quote Mao twice in the same paper. But as he said, the future is bright, the road is torturous. Thank you.